Amid all of the drama surrounding the Indianapolis Colts, we've got a game this weekend. The Colts are heading north to take on the Minnesota Vikings on Sunday Night Football. So, can Joe Flacco lead the Colts to an improbable victory in prime time? Let's talk about it. Welcome to the Horseshoe Huddle Podcast presented by Indianapolis Colts on SI.com, part of the Fans First Sports Network. My name is Andrew Moore, and as always, I'm joined here by my co-host of the Horseshoe Huddle Podcast, Drake Wally. Drake, I think the NFL world, the football world, definitely Colts world is still shocked and is still all fired up about this quarterback switch from Anthony Richardson to Joe Flacco, and we're certainly going to continue talking about that tonight. As not only did Richardson and Flacco speak to the media today, but also Shane Steichen. So we definitely need to take a look at what they all had to say. But amidst all of this distraction, the Colts face a really, really good Minnesota Vikings team that started out 5-0, have lost the last two, but look pretty motivated to get back into the win column. So it's going to be a very, very hard game for this Colts team. And to make matters worse, it's in prime time.
Yeah, and amidst so much change, which we'll get into, the first part of the episode is going to be trying to break down those pressers, but so much change at the most important position, a lot of drama. We thought we could avoid that, Andrew. In the last episode you mentioned, we almost went, an entire half season without any drama, but we can't. So amidst all that, yes, you just recently got your game bumped to prime time, for God's sakes. So it's like you're hoping that Joe Flacco can go out there and lead a victory, but we'll dive into that. We'll dive into the pressers. We're going to dive into everything. It's going to be a good episode. I expect a lot of comments in the chat.
Yeah, I do too, because there's certainly a lot to talk about, a lot to discuss, not only about the comments that we heard today from Shane Steichen, Anthony Richardson, and Joe Flacco, but also just about this game, because this is a really interesting matchup. I mean, going up against a team that started out pretty hot, has lost the last two. Who would have thought that Sam Darnold would be having the season that he is? Brian Flores and that Minnesota Vikings defense has certainly had an impact on things as well. And the Colts are despite all of this controversy and all of this drama, the Colts are sitting at 500, and they're still right in the middle of their of their most difficult stretch of the entire schedule. Let's take a look at the chat here. NFL Nerds saying it's 2022 all over again. I see massive leadership failures from Steichen and how this is being handled. And then NFL Nerd is asking, can y'all confirm if this is true? One, Steichen didn't tell AR why he was benched, and two, Steichen didn't check in with the players. So I know for a fact that it wasn't announced to the team that the quarterback switch was happening. There was no formal announcement that Joe Flacco was going to be the quarterback. We have that on record from Michael Pittman Jr., from others in the locker room, that a lot of them found out over social media or for somebody else telling them. It wasn't actually an announcement by the Indianapolis Colts. So that's got to raise some eyebrows there. And as far as if Shane Steichen didn't tell Anthony Richardson why he was benched, that I'm not sure of, because the only thing we have to go off of is Anthony Richardson. Today, when he was asked if he was given a reason why he was being benched, a particular reason, he said not necessarily. So that tends to indicate that it wasn't a very long conversation between the two, and that we can kind of confirm, or not confirm, but we can kind of infer from that it wasn't exactly explained in great detail to Anthony Richardson all of the ins and outs of why he's no longer the starter with the Colts.
Yeah, and like you said, it sounds like the coaching staff, at least for right now, wanted to keep that a pretty brief conversation. Maybe they're going to elaborate more on that later, because it is a big game you're planning for here on the road. But right now, a lot of ambiguity. That's the big word for me. A lot of ambiguity and confusion too.
Exactly. Patrick, the CFO, is here. Good to see you, my brother. And Patrick is saying Grandpa Jim Medals, the return, and the sequels are usually worse than the originals. I mean, that might be the comment of the night, and we're 4 minutes into the episode. Patrick, thank you so much for all of the support. Glad that you're back. Glad that you're not stuck in LaGuardia anymore. Next time you'll have to hitch a ride with your close personal friend Jeff Saturday to get back home. But hey, it's good to see you here. Paul Wilson saying real leaders make tough decisions. That's true, but I don't know if this was actually a tough decision. He also says Sunday Night Football, about time we get a real primetime game. Be careful what you wish for. We're going to see that as we dive into this is a really tough matchup for the Indianapolis Colts, and it's as on the road too. The Colts haven't had a home primetime game in quite some time. This game was supposed to be a 1:00 game, got flexed into the Sunday night window. So that's the first time all season that the Colts are going to be in prime time. I'm sure that Shane Steichen and the group are going to want to show out and try to give it their all. Not that they don't give it their all every single game, but try to have a good performance in prime time. So as everyone else joins us here in the chat, make sure you're following us on all of our socials, like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook, follow at Colts_SI on X, and subscribe to the Horseshoe Huddle YouTube channel. Make sure you hit that bell so you know when Drake and I go live, normally every Monday and Thursday night, but for special breaking news episodes like last night, or when we have to switch up our schedule like tonight, we're going live on Wednesday. You want to make sure your notifications on so you never miss us. And then wherever you listen to podcasts, be sure to subscribe there as well. You get access to the Horseshoe Huddle halftime, our audio only episodes. And if you miss us live, you already know where to go. So be sure to give us a 5-star review while you're there so we can continue to reach other Colts fans just like you. So Drake, before we dive into this matchup between the Colts and the Vikings, we do have to touch on what Steichen, Richardson, and Flacco all had to say about this situation and about how things have developed. So we'll start with Shane Steichen. Shane Steichen, I think the things that really stood out to me today was, again, Shane Steichen said that Flacco is going to be the starting quarterback moving forward. He said that this isn't a temporary thing, that Flacco is going to be the starter theoretically for the rest of the year. So that kind of confirms what we were thinking, that this isn't just a one game benching for Anthony Richardson. And really there's no timeline of when we potentially could see Anthony Richardson back in the starting lineup. But Drake, I think out of all three of these pressures, Shane Steichen's was the one that disappointed me the most. Honestly, a lot of the things he said were non-answers, were cop-outs in my opinion. When he was asked if the locker room was on board with this decision, he said, "I can't speak for the locker room," which, you're the freaking head coach. You're literally the voice for this locker room. That was a big red flag to me. When he asked if he sees Anthony Richardson starting for this team again, he said, "I can't predict the future." Again, not exactly the best answer you're hoping for. So Shane Steichen, to me, really didn't. It didn't make me feel good about not only the direction of this, didn't make me necessarily feel good about or change my mind about the decision to do this. I still think it's a terrible decision and the completely wrong decision for this franchise. Shane Steichen, in my opinion, did little to calm any of the nerves or any of the anger from the fan base that wants Anthony Richardson to still be in there. And honestly, it might have made it a little bit worse considering what I saw online today.
Yeah, and in short, because I covered this piece, and I remember just a couple noteworthy quotes in brief. I'm just looking at where we're at as a football team, sitting at 500 with a lot of football left. Just felt that Joe gives us the best chance going forward. Stark contrast compared to what he was saying about Anthony Richardson needing to see the field as much as humanly possible. He's our guy as long as he's healthy. And then another one is it's my obligation to 53 guys in the organization to win football games. Right now, I'm focused on the present of winning football games. We'll get to the future when we have to get to the future. The future was when he pounded the table to get Anthony Richardson. The future was when he was starting his first game in 2023. Like, what in the ever-loving hell kind of deer in a headlight answer is that? Does somebody have an animatronic Shane up there they're controlling from a distance? I don't know, but it just seems it raises red flags because it's stark contrast to what he's been preaching, to what he was talking. I mean, you could tell he was so excited about Richardson. Now he looks like he's like, wow, I have to start Joe Flacco. I don't know, man. Just a very weird presser. His was definitely the most concerning to me.
it's just a complete 180 from
Yep.
what Shane Steichen has been preaching, from what all the leadership has been preaching since they drafted Anthony Richardson 18 months ago. I mean, there's clips going out there and circulating on X throughout the day of when Richardson was drafted, and you see both Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen talking about that it's going to be a bumpy ride. There's going to be highs, there's going to be lows, but the best way for him to get better and for him to improve and develop is by going out there and playing. Both those guys were very very convicted in that stance and dedicated to that plan. And then all of a sudden it completely flips on its head. What's really sucks is, we, from everything we've heard, there really hasn't been a report out there that's gone contrary to the fact that this was a Shane Steichen decision. But the more that you hear, as far in terms of the comments and how quickly this decision was made, and how nobody else was, like, the locker room wasn't informed, and just how quickly things have changed here, it makes you want to think that because we've seen this movie before in 2022, that Jim Irsay had a role in this. But again, everything that we've heard, all the reports from trusted media sources that are on the ground there in Indy, have said that this was Shane Steichen's decision and that Jim Irsay was not involved. So if that's the case, then it makes me question Shane Steichen's leadership ability, because regardless if this is the right, what if I think this is the right decision or not, it doesn't if this was Shane Steichen's decision and only Shane Steichen's decision, I don't think this was the best way to go about it. To leak it out to the media and have your team find out through the media before actually telling your team that we were making a switch, and then to not even tell them, just to go along with, oh, well, it's out there, so I guess I don't need to make a statement. It just seems like it's bad leadership from top to bottom, and from what we have gathered, it doesn't seem like the locker room is lost on Richardson, but it seems like the locker room is kind of in a daze. I mean, we heard from people that were in the locker room. Our own Jake Arthur was in the locker room today, that the locker room was eerily similar to 2022 when Frank Reich was fired. Just kind of a daze, kind of not sure what to think at the moment. And you saw clips of Zaire Franklin, you saw clips of Josh Downs. Josh Downs looked dejected today. Michael Pittman kind of looked like he was in a daze, just kind of like, I don't even know what to think right now. And that doesn't scream that it's a good place in that locker room right now, which is very disappointing.
Yeah, imagine you're a player in that locker room and you've been bought into Anthony Richardson. You remember after the Chicago Bears victory, he said, "Hey, everybody, I have to play better. I appreciate you guys getting us that victory. Jonathan Taylor did his thing, blah, blah, blah." You hear big Quentin Nelson say, "Hey, we love you, bro. We've got your back." Like, the team was bought into Richardson, man. And so there could be a rift here. And you hear a guy like Josh Downs go, Joe Flacco, this is paraphrasing, but he's like 40 years old. He doesn't, I would say that Richardson's probably the guy for the future. Like, I think someone asked him, something about his thoughts on Joe possibly being the quarterback of the next couple of years. So it's a weird feeling. You've got guys like Pittman saying, "I didn't find out any of this quarterback change stuff until I opened my X account," which is disgusting. Okay, so maybe Shane Steichen needs to bench himself for a second and learn how to be a head coach and how to handle a situation like this. Because right now you're meddling with a guy that was supposed to start, and you're starting a 40-year-old quarterback that might retire after the season for all you know. You've got him on a 1-year contract. He goes out there and balls out. Guess what? You can't afford him. You're not going to pay him. You didn't pay Minshew, so it just seems like out of nowhere, just a blindside hit. This franchise goes from being locked into a struggling quarterback, which they knew was going to happen at some point, to just being all out on him right now. Bench him for this entire season. Guess what? You can learn that way too. And again, watch another veteran quarterback for a second straight season.
I guess we're going to find out here if that decision was actually is going to be a good one, because, and if they consider going 9-8 and just sneaking into the wild card round the right decision, hey, if you're fine with mediocrity, more power to you. Instead of trying to be a successful franchise in the future. Shout out to Truitt for the super chat. Really do appreciate it. And Truitt, I'm sorry, buddy, I cannot get on this. Let the Sling and Sammy era begin. Sling and Sammy era had a chance to begin back in 2022, and we know what Sam Ellinger is. He's not a starting quarterback in the NFL. I'm sorry, he's not a starting quarterback, but we do appreciate all of your support. But let's quickly talk about what what Richardson and Flacco had to say. Richardson, obviously, you could tell on his face, he was dejected. He's trying to do the best he can, I think, considering the circumstances. When he talked about when he was asked about tapping out, I think he really knows now how bad of a decision that was, and something that he can't do again. And really, he just talked about kind of trying to grow and really, what can he say at this point? Trying to grow as much as he can from the bench and make the most of his opportunities. And when the opportunity does come, that he's got to really grasp it and really attack it. So I think the biggest thing that stood out to me was when talking about when she was talking about when Shane Steichen informed him that he wasn't going to be starting quarterback anymore. And James Boyd was digging a little bit and asked, did Steichen tell you or detail or tell you exactly why you were being benched? And he said, not necessarily. And honestly, I don't have a problem with that answer, but it seemed like some other people did. I saw Pat McAfee had an issue with that too, of like saying that. And so did like AQ Shipley on his show. And I don't see what's wrong with that. Is he supposed to cover and say, yeah, he did and went into great detail when he didn't? I mean, if Shane Steichen is going to bench him, what does he have to do to cover for Shane Steichen? That's on Shane Steichen to actually go out and fully explain to him why, not just say, hey, you're benched. Thanks for what you did. We'll see you at practice. You got to, if Shane Steichen didn't go into detail, that's on Shane Steichen. That's not on Anthony Richardson. If he's asked, I don't see why that's such a big deal, in my opinion. But I could be wrong. I could be, maybe I'm in the minority and think that maybe he should have covered for Shane Steichen. But if Shane Steichen's looking out for himself and trying to win games, I mean, what does Anthony Richardson? Why does Anthony Richardson have to cover for him? I guess is my biggest question.
Yeah, and Richardson really, I thought, handled the questions pretty well. And one thing that's really encouraging is that he said, "I haven't lost confidence," and you could feel that he hasn't lost confidence. I think he's probably a little bit upset, and you're just hoping that he takes that kind of emotion and can harness it into improving and harness it into the best possible situation and make the most of this. I know it's yet again, and this time he's healthy, which is a little bit. That's got to be a killer for the guy, because last year, obviously, he was hurt, couldn't be on the field. They would have had him out there. Now he's healthy, ready to play. He's just been struggling, and you dial him back a bit, saying, let's give him a break. You could tell that he was a little bit irked off, and I'm just hoping that this is an exception, because we've seen a damning statistic. I think it was Nate Atkins from the Indy Star put this out there. When this happens, when you take a young QB, you start him, you bench him, you start him again, it almost never works out, or they almost never even go back to the kid. So it's like you're hoping this is an exception to the rule. But hey, man, history has a way of repeating itself if you don't learn from the mistake. And it looks like the Colts are repeating from just a couple years ago when they actually were bad enough to get AR.
Yeah, exactly. David Palmer, thank you so much for the super chat, brother. Really appreciate it. And David is asking, what happens if Joe Flacco gets hurt? It's simple. They go back to Richardson. Richardson's the backup. They said he's going to be the quarterback too. It's not like they're making him the emergency quarterback, or they're placing him on IR for the rest of the year. If Flacco gets hurt, Richardson's up. So that's why I think Richardson needs to continue to prepare as if he is the starter. And I think he will, because he's one play away. The first play, God forbid this happens, but the first play of that Minnesota Vikings game, say Joe Flacco gets hit really bad and gets hurt, Anthony Richardson could be right back in there. So you always have to consider that if you're a backup. That's what every backup quarterback always says. You prepare as if you are the starter, because you're one play away. Anthony Richardson is no different. While Joe Flacco, the plan is for Joe Flacco to go the rest of the year. I mean, injuries the injury rate in the NFL is 100%. And literally on any single play, Joe Flacco could get hurt. Anthony Richardson has to be prepared for that.
Yeah, and that's something that even Sam Ellinger, he has to prepare like he's going to be the starter in case a second guy goes. I mean, this is how every quarterback in the NFL prepares. And so I will say though, Richardson, that's why you really hope that when he says his confidence isn't shaken, that it's true, because on any given Sunday, any given primetime game, Monday, Thursday, whatever, you just take a wrong hit, man, and you might be out for the entire game at the least. You're going to need a solid backup who's been able to at least understand the game plan. So Richardson needs to study away, man.
Yeah, David, thank you so much for all of your support. Really, really do appreciate it. And then finally, Drake, Joe Flacco, it seems like he understands that. I mean, he sympathizes with what Anthony Richardson is going for. He's definitely not going to apologize for getting the starting role, nor should he, honestly, as a competitor. But it seems like Joe Flacco is definitely sympathizing with Anthony Richardson, and he even admitted if this would have happened to him at a young age, he probably wouldn't have been able to handle it the way that Anthony Richardson has. So for Joe Flacco, I do think that Joe Flacco is a good person for Anthony Richardson to lean on. I think it's somebody that if you're going to have to be benched and forced to learn behind somebody, I mean, Joe Flacco's been doing it a long time, so Richardson could take a lot from Joe Flacco. But at the same time, this is the guy, this is the Colts quarterback now. This is the starting quarterback. And just like how the Colts were only going to go as far as Richardson took them, the Colts are only going to go as far as Joe Flacco takes them. And honestly, I mean, yes, he has 7 touchdowns to 1 interception this year. Again, I think that's a little you're just box score watching at that point. The offense was definitely not as dynamic with Joe Flacco in there, and it was against 2 of the worst teams in the NFL. So it's going to be interesting to see how Joe Flacco in this offense, what they're able to do against, the Vikings, the Bills, the Lions, some really, really tough teams that are left on their schedule.
Yeah, and I really did like Joe Flacco's interview. He really answered questions like a guy who truly has been in the league for almost 20 years. But I will say, I that's why I'm like a little sad about this, is because Minshew was a little bit, I'm not saying Flacco's not bought into helping Richardson, but I feel like Flacco is more of like, I'm the starting quarterback. You know what? You pay attention to me. Okay. I'll give you some pointers here and there, but I'm going to do my job. That's just Joe Flacco. Gardner Minshew was a rare quarterback. I mean, he was like, I'll help you. Watch me. You and I can talk all day. He just seemed more bought into it, which is like a little bit of a buzzkill that you're going through it again. But I will say Joe Flacco has won a Super Bowl. He had one of the most incredible playoff runs I've ever seen in my life. And you know what? He's been doing it for a really, really long time. And he's had a lot of success against guys like Tom Brady and Peyton Manning. So if Richardson can make the most of this situation and truly use that incredible brain of his, he could really, really turn a lot of our opinions around, but it just looks pretty bleak right now.
Yeah, and in Flacco's defense, it really isn't his job to develop Anthony Richardson.
That's true.
So he needs to be focused on winning games. That's all that matters to him. Because if this is his only year in Indianapolis, I can tell you he's not going to give a damn what happens to this franchise after he leaves. But while he is here, he's the starting quarterback, it seems, for the rest of the year. And that gets us into our game preview tonight, ladies and gentlemen. There is a game, a pretty big one, on Sunday Night Football. The Colts heading into this matchup with the Vikings as 5-point underdogs. Nothing surprising there. I was actually expecting it to be probably around more of a 6-point advantage. So actually better than I thought it would be. The over under 46.5. I would expect both of these teams to be in the 20s at least on Sunday. But it's a big matchup, and I'm sure despite the decision already being made, all the cameras are going to be on Joe Flacco. All the cameras are going to be on Anthony Richardson. If Joe Flacco struggles, especially, if people are going to talk about it. And if Joe Flacco doesn't struggle, if he goes out there and has a good game, people are going to be talking about it, that this was the right move. So there's going to be quick reactions all over the place. But when you look at the grand scheme of things here, Drake, this is a big game for the Indianapolis Colts. Not necessarily in the standings, maybe, because it's an NFC team, but for everything that has gone on this week and all the changes, all the upheaval, all the drama, if the Colts go out there and lay an egg this weekend against the Vikings, the noise is just going to get worse, and you're going to have even even less trust in Shane Steichen and this Colt, the head decision makers of the Indianapolis Colts moving forward.
That's very true. And the good thing here is that Joe Flacco at least provides you I think a pretty stable floor. I'm not saying that the wheels can't fall off with a guy who is literally a statue. Okay. But I'm saying that he's been in the league for 17 years. Okay. So like the floor is a little more stable. It's just, it seems like in the games he played, the Colts went out, scored right away. Okay. And then the defense was like, okay, let's hone in on this. And they figured him out pretty quickly. Okay. Like, Brian Flores, by the way, who praised Anthony Richardson's tired run, is going to be relentless going after Joe Flacco. He is literally in a bottle. He's just in a space right there, not going to leave anybody. Okay. So I think there is a chance for success because you still have playmakers like Michael Pittman, like Josh Downs, like Alec Pierce, like A.D. Mitchell. And Joe Flacco is more accurate right now than Anthony Richardson. But I don't know, man. That's a really aggressive defense, and Joe Flacco cannot move, which I know there's going to be people out there excited for Flacco starting. But, man, he's not going to be able to escape that pressure if it's in his face.
I think the pressure is a little bit worrisome just because you don't have the mobility that you do with Richardson. But at the same time, Joe Flacco has also demonstrated that he can get the ball out quickly and he can find his hot reads very, very quickly. And honestly, we talk about, the Brian Flores' defense gets a lot of hype around it. But when you actually look at the numbers, the Vikings haven't been great, especially against the pass. They ranked 30th in the NFL against the pass, giving up on average 263 yards per game. They're one of the worst pass defenses in the NFL. And the Colts as a team, the Colts offense in Flacco's 2 starts, I wasn't going to go try to decipher and just didn't have time to really look too deeply at how many yards were for Richardson, how many yards were for Flacco in that Pittsburgh game. So in the 2 starts that Joe Flacco has had this year against the Jaguars and against the Titans, the Colts have averaged 358 yards per game and 27 points per game. So when you take all that into account, you take into account that the Vikings' pass defense isn't great. If you can get back past that pressure, which is a big if, because as we'll look at the injury report, Bernhard Raimann, I don't think he's going to play this weekend, but we'll talk about that later. Do you think Joe Flacco can have success against this Vikings defense? And if you had to put money on it today, do you think he will have success on Sunday night?
I think that there's a high probability of it because, like you mentioned, while that is an aggressive approach, and when it works, it hits like a massive right hook in boxing. Okay, so the thing is, though, if a quarterback can pick up on a blitz-heavy defense, you start really getting ate up alive by quick throws. And I think that Flacco is going to be able to have opportunity after opportunity to do this because the secondary isn't exactly something to write home about for the Vikings. Okay, so there's a reason they're 30th in the NFL. So I think it's really the front. I think it's the linebackers, but I think if you can get past that, man, which a lot of the blitzing does come from the linebacking unit, I think that you're going to be able to have success. It's just going to be a matter of if can Flacco, if they get penetration, you just got to try not to allow too much penetration because if they get through that line and they get into that pocket where he's mostly going to be, unless it's like a bootleg or something, he's just going to be right there to get hit. He can't outrun anybody. So,
yeah, I do think that it bodes well for Flacco that that a lot of the simulated pressure that Brian Flores is going to try to send his way, it's going to be tough to fool Joe Flacco just because he has seen it all in that regard. So a quarterback with more experience against the Brian Flores defense is certainly better for this matchup. And do I think Joe Flacco is going to go out there and throw for 350 yards and 4 touchdowns? No, I don't. I think that's probably unrealistic. But I could also see Joe Flacco going out there and throwing for 250 to 275 yards and a couple of touchdowns. We'll see. But I could also see Joe Flacco really struggling as well, especially if the pressure really starts to get to him. And then he's trying to force things, and it could end up in some turnovers. We have our very own Sean Ackerman here tonight. Good to see you, my brother. And Sean is asking, would the Colts
Machine.
re-sign Flacco if they make the playoffs? I think if Flacco wants to play another season, it wouldn't surprise me. It really wouldn't surprise me. They seem like they have an affinity for these older quarterbacks. We can't get off the older quarterback train around here. So if the Colts do make the playoffs with Flacco, they'll probably say something like, "Hey, if we had a full season with Joe Flacco, maybe we could have done a little bit more." So I don't know at this point, but honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if Flacco wants to return. He could be back next year
if the price is right and it makes sense, and they think that he can somehow still, if they're still bought into Anthony Richardson, Sean, I think that it makes sense. But again, they didn't re-sign Gardner Minshew after he had success, and it seemed like he really, really wanted to help Anthony Richardson. Okay, so I think if he has success, he might be asking too much money. It's going to be if Flacco is okay with taking another like $8 or $9 million.
Well, at this point, Drake, they didn't re-sign Minshew because the plan was to let Anthony Richardson develop on the field. That is obviously no longer the plan. So very easily see Flacco back because they obviously don't think that Richardson should be developing on the field. Otherwise, he'd be out there on Sunday. Let's look at the running game, though, Drake, for this Indianapolis Colts team. Big challenge for Jonathan Taylor on Sunday, because as poor as the Vikings have been against the pass, they've been equally as good against the run. Vikings are third in the NFL against the run, only allowing 83.9 yards per game. And this is where I think not having Anthony Richardson out there really, really hurts. We saw granted, Jonathan Taylor was not out there in the two games that Joe Flacco started. I understand that. However, we saw how, and this is getting back to why the offense not being as dynamic with Anthony Richardson out there, the run game did struggle at times because it wasn't as dynamic. You don't have the threat of the quarterback run game to pause those linebackers a little bit, allow Jonathan Taylor to get that half-second edge, and we've seen Jonathan Taylor have some really good success this year. So it wouldn't surprise me at all to see the Minnesota Vikings load up the box, say Jonathan Taylor isn't going to beat us tonight, and force Joe Flacco to go out there and beat us, because you'd rather try to force the Colts passing offense, which really hasn't had too much success, try to beat you, rather than have a top 5 back in the NFL go out there and run wild on you.
Yeah, and sorry for the train back there. It's awful. It's a haunting sound. But
it's not the Brock Bowers train either.
Yeah, no, that one, man, that's in a different state, Andrew. Come on, let that go.
My goodness. I will never let that go. Never let that go. We're getting on. We were getting on the Malachi Starks train, but hey, we'll see what train. Maybe that is definitely not going to be a quarterback train, because the quarterbacks in this draft class are all. Ugh. But I digress. Go ahead, Drake.
No. Hey, man, I do not blame you for venting. So you're looking at this Vikings defense, and we talked about how abysmal it's been in the pass game, but Andrew Van Ginkel and I believe it's Pat Jones II. I mean, I'm looking right here. They each lead the team in tackles for loss. So, or they're first and second. So Van Ginkel has 8, okay, and Jones II has 6. I mean, and then you've got Jonathan Bernard with 5. I mean, this is going to be an aggressive team. They're going to remove Jonathan Taylor from the game plan. They're going to force Joe Flacco to deal with pressure all day long and to throw those little dinky throws. I mean, and Joe Flacco has shown in his post-Ravens career as a backup that he is okay with dinking and dunking all day. So, for a blitz-heavy defense, maybe Flacco is the better option. But again, if guys like Van Ginkel, guys like Jones II, guys like Jonathan Bernard, who's been way better of an addition than I thought he'd be, if they keep getting through and a guy like Ryman can't play and Flacco is just there for the taking, you can't intentional ground every play, all right? And he can't outrun those guys. You might see some sacks. I'm just saying, if Flacco can't get that ball out, look for about 5 or 6 sacks, man. He can't move.
And I do want to give Patrick his flowers right here. I mean, if you look at the chat, Patrick is still an absolute menace. With every single time he's in here, he's an absolute menace. But I will give him his flowers. Andrew Van Ginkel, what did I tell you guys? And yes, he was all on the Andrew Van Ginkel train throughout the offseason, and Van Ginkel is absolutely tearing it up in Minnesota. The flowers are going to you, my good buddy, as well as the continued title of being an absolute menace in the chat. But it's going to be interesting to see how much success Jonathan Taylor can have, especially if Bernhard Raimann isn't out there, because Bernhard Raimann is well, he's not the best. I wouldn't say he's the best run blocking left tackle. He's certainly a good run blocking left tackle. And if Raimann isn't out there, it's likely going to be rookie 3rd round pick Matt Gonzalez getting his first NFL start at left tackle, going up against Jonathan Grenard, who is having a really, really good season as well with the Minnesota Vikings. So it's not that nearly the trial by fire that Blake Freeland received last year, going up against the likes of like Aaron Donald and Myles Garrett. But Matt Gonzalez is going to have his hands full on Sunday, and it's going to be. I think he's a really good prospect. I think Matt Gonzalez has the potential to be a really good starter in the NFL, both at tackle and at guard. So it's going to be interesting to see how he ends up holding up against this Vikings defense if Raimann can't go, and how he's able to help create holes for Jonathan Taylor. Because if the pass game isn't working, this Colts team is going to have to rely on Jonathan Taylor to get things going on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, and it's a lot easier to tee off on someone's ground game when your quarterback can't move and you know who's actually going to get the ball. But I will say that, Jonathan Taylor, he still has that ability, even when a team knows exactly who the ball is going to. He still has that capability to just end a play. He can just be gone. Once he has one cut, it's over. I don't care if Van Ginkel's got a line on him. No one is going to beat Jonathan Taylor in open space. But, yeah, man, we'll have to see, because I know that Matt Gonzalez is a better prospect than Blake Freeland. I think he'll have better success. I know you and I are high on him. The Colts, where they traded up to get him, and him and Bortolini, I think, have a future spot, both of them, on that offensive line. But that's a tall task on primetime in Minnesota, man. So.
Yeah, and outside of Jonathan Taylor and really Josh Downs, again, I would expect Josh Downs to probably have a pretty big game on Sunday against the Vikings. It seems like Josh Downs has been the favorite target of Joe Flacco every time he's been in there. I don't think that's going to change. I mean, Josh Downs has been the best wide receiver for the Colts this year. Plain and simple. Josh Downs is probably going to have a big game, but it's going to take more. You can't just have Jonathan Taylor and Josh Downs. You got to have other weapons stepping up to help Joe Flacco if this Colts team wants to win. Michael Pittman Jr., a terrible game against the Houston Texans. He even came out and said after the game he didn't do near enough to help Anthony Richardson against the Texans. And I think that probably played a role into him looking so guilty and looking so dumbfounded today in the locker room. While he wasn't asked about it, he certainly didn't look like his normal happy self that Michael Pittman Jr. is. Alec Pierce is certainly going to need to be relied upon that deep skill set that he has. Joe Flacco's got to hit him. Joe Flacco hit him in the Jaguars game and completely missed him over and over again in the Tennessee Titans game. That's your explosive threat on offense. And Adonai Mitchell, we're halfway through his rookie season. Still hardly anything to show for it. Adonai Mitchell may be my biggest disappointment of the entire season for the Indianapolis Colts. I had such high hopes for this kid. He was tearing it up in training camp, and he's done next to nothing so far this season. But Drake, if the Colts want to beat the Vikings, it can't just be Taylor and Downs. Other guys have to step up as well.
Yeah, because guess what? I'll make this brief, but Richardson sucked passing overall against the Texans, but guess what? Whether Richardson's throwing good balls or whether Joe Flacco's throwing good balls or it's a freaking jugs machine throwing those balls, it still hit those receivers in the hands and they still dropped them. Okay, so, I mean, they're going to need to catch Joe Flacco's passes, all right? So it's going to be on the receivers to bounce back. It's going to be on guys like if Goodson gets another opportunity to catch a ball, you got to capitalize on this. Richardson struggled, but my God, was he kind of left out there to dry by some of his receivers. So this is a big game for the receiving core. This is a big game. I think, this might be an underlying one, but where the freaking hell are the tight ends? We've been talking about this group.
Non-existent.
And they've had so many guys. Instead, you're talking about Will Mallory dropping passes and Granson being a ghost and Mo Alley Cox having one good game and just blocking a bunch. So maybe this is a game where you get some of that going. I don't know, but like you said, I think if there's anything to really bet high on, it's Josh Downs, because he's going to need to get that ball out quick. Who better to hit in a quick win situation than number one?
Hell, Drake, I don't think it's a stretch to say that despite Jelani Woods playing literally 0 snaps in the regular season, I think stock has gone up on Jelani Woods just simply
Might
because
still be the best.
the tight ends have been absolutely trash this year for the Indianapolis Colts outside of Mo Alley Cox. But as we transition to the defensive side of the ball for the Indianapolis Colts, nobody could have predicted that Sam Darnold would be having the type of season that he is for this Minnesota Vikings team. He's led the Vikings to that 5-2 record. He's got a 67% completion percentage. He has 1,600 yards, 14 touchdowns to 5 interceptions. This is the Sam Darnold that people saw coming out in the 2018 draft. This is what people thought he could become, a starter on a competitive team in the NFL. Is Sam Darnold an MVP candidate? I don't think so. I think Lamar Jackson is well on his way to winning his second consecutive MVP, his third MVP overall. But Sam Darnold is playing fantastic football. And while the passing offense for the Vikings might not be one of the best in the NFL. I think they're currently ranked 17th, the 17th highest passing offense at 213.6 yards per game. Darnold has shown a hell of a lot more confidence that we've seen from him in the past, and he's certainly been able to get the football down the field and lead some really, really good drives. So, Drake, if you're Gus Bradley and you're this Colts defensive staff, how are you planning to stop Sam Bradford? Jesus Christ, Sam Darnold on Sunday?
I think that it has to be from the internal pressure. DeForest Buckner, big game. You got a guy like Taven Bryan. You need to capitalize when you're out there in your situations. Grover Stewart needs to just do whatever he can to not let Aaron Jones take off. By the way, the year of the free agent running back is truly upon us, because this guy, Aaron Jones, still has 501 rushing yards. He's averaging 70 a game plus. Okay. So he's helping this offense move, just like Sam Darnold is, just like Justin Jefferson is, just like Jordan Addison is. But credit to Kevin O'Connell. Kevin O'Connell just seems like he played quarterback, right, in the NFL, so he just knows the position. I think that right now he is what Colts fans were hoping Shane Steichen would be at this point with Anthony Richardson, right? So I think that you have to get that inside pressure, because he's going to see that coming from the outside. He's going to be able to get that ball out quick. Justin Jefferson can roast a guy like Sauce Gardner any given Sunday. They don't have a Sauce Gardner on Indianapolis' secondary. So we'll have to see, but I think that it's got to be from, I think Buckner, Stewart, and Taven Bryan, dare I say it, they need to have some pressure, and they need to have big games from the interior.
Well, we know Taven Bryan's not going to have a big game from the interior because, quite frankly, he's hot garbage. But DeForest Buckner, yes, I think DeForest Buckner is going to have some opportunities to eat, and I also think that the Colts should really embrace the simulated pressures that they did last week against the Houston Texans. And that's another reason why last week's game was just so frustrating to watch this Indianapolis Colts team and this Indianapolis Colts offense just waste so many opportunities, is because Gus Bradley may have called one of his best games since becoming the defensive coordinator for the Indianapolis Colts. They were getting after CJ Stroud. While Joe Mixon had a decent game, the Texans as a whole had 96 yards rushing. The Colts defense did their job, and they really got after CJ Stroud. They were winning with just 4. The simulated pressures were definitely throwing Stroud for a loop. Now, granted, the Texans offensive line is pretty bad, but at the same time, I think you can take some of that. We all know Darnold's past. The famous comment of, "I was seeing ghosts out there." Pressure really affects Sam Darnold, and it still does to this day. One of the reasons he's been so successful is because the Vikings have done a good job of not allowing pressure to get to him. Yes, I think on the season, he's still been sacked 21 times, but when he is kept clean and he isn't under constant duress, he's been a pretty good quarterback. That's what needs to happen. You need to make Sam Darnold second guess himself. You have to bring the simulated pressure, act like pressure is coming from one area and then it ends up coming from another. Like you said, that interior pressure with DeForest Buckner, with Grover Stewart, dare I say Dio Adangbo, even in the middle. I think that's what's going to be huge. Pay and Latu, we understand they're getting the pressures. Those pressures need to start turning into sacks. No Christian Darrisaw over on that left side. The Vikings just traded for Cam Robinson, who is a solid left tackle. I would assume that he's probably going to play already this week. If not, it's going to be, I forget his first name, but his last name's Quisenberry. And Quisenberry, I know on Thursday night, did not fare well. So you could see if Cam Robinson is still adjusting to this offense, maybe Latu gets the better of him, and maybe we start to see a really good. We start to see those pressures turning into sacks for Latu. But yeah, pressuring Sam Darnold and making him second guess himself with simulated pressures, definitely the way to go.
Yeah, and it's something really interesting here. I'm looking at these receiving numbers. So there's been 128 completions. 41 of those have gone to Justin Jefferson. The next closest is Aaron Jones with 22, and then you've got a three-way tie for 14 catches between Addison, Naylor, and Mund, their backup tight end. This is a Justin Jefferson, Aaron Jones offense. I don't think this is as much of a Sam Darnold offense as it is a Justin Jefferson and Aaron Jones offense. So you can see who the playmakers are here and who Darnold goes to. It's those two. Even in the passing game, he still targets Jones more than he targets Addison. So even missing a couple games, Addison isn't even averaging 3 catches a game. So it is going to be paramount to get that interior pressure. You're still going to allow plays from Jones. He's shown he is just a great running back, but you got to limit his impact. And my God, I know that it's an impossible task, but you have to try to find a way to keep Justin Jefferson from absolutely destroying your defense, because then that will allow those guys who haven't made many plays to start making plays.
This is a really interesting question from the CFO himself. Patrick, thank you so much, brother. I say it all the time, but I truly do mean it. Thank you so much for all of your support. Really, really means the world to Drake and I. And Patrick asks, this is a great question. If the Colts start Flacco all 4 games in this gauntlet and lose all of them, do we see Richardson back the rest of the season? I mean, it wouldn't even. I would think that it at the very least has to be entertained. The entire reason, or really the only reason, that they have given for Flacco starting is because, quote unquote, he gives us the best chance to win right now. And if he loses all 4 of those games, that's not winning right now. That would put the Colts at 4-8. The playoffs would be pretty much gone at that point. I think it would be foolish if they lose all 4 games and they still stick with Flacco. It would be absolutely foolish. You put Richardson back in and you let him get as many reps as possible throughout the rest of the season, because the playoffs are gone. There's not going to be a hope to make this miraculous run. There really is. I mean, even if they do make the playoffs, it's not like they're going deep. So if I was the head coach, it wouldn't even be a question. If they lose all 4 of these next 4 games and are sitting at 4-8, they make the switch back to Richardson and you start to try to develop him on the field again.
Yeah, especially given the end of the year schedule that the Colts have. It's pretty soft. It's with some teams that are struggling, or teams that have young quarterbacks. So, I agree 100%. It's just, I will say that if that happens, oh my God, man, whoever, that Shane Steichen, man, you're talking about you start Richardson, you bench Richardson, you start Richardson again, and you bench the guy that you started over him. I mean, what a hell of a second year for Shane.
Certainly wouldn't be a very good look for Shane Steichen and his decision making as a head coach, but I will have to see, because I don't know if the Colts are going to lose all these next 4 games. They definitely have some tough opponents, but the Jets are pretty bad as well, and I wouldn't put it past the Colts to surprise us and win one of the 3 games against the Vikings. They may win the Vikings. We'll see what our predictions are. The Vikings, the Bills, and the Lions, and really surprise a lot of people. But great question, Patrick. Really, really appreciate it. Appreciate all of your support as always. And then Patrick has another question. The CFO is continuing to get the questions in. If the Colts get absolutely blown out by the Vikings, do we see any player sale offs at the deadline in prep for a full rebuild? I don't think so. I don't see that happening because, again, they're not making this Flacco move for one game. And if they lose Sunday night, they're not going to completely give up hope on the playoffs. In my opinion, they'll just look at it as one loss, and they still have a lot of football ahead of them, which is very, very true. So if they do get blown out, I don't see them going into a full rebuild mode. The only way I would see that, I honestly don't see that, but I think if that did happen, it would probably be after the season.
Yeah, and if they do, I just really don't think that they're going to get rid of anybody, especially since they paid everybody. I mean, they retained a lot of guys, they gave a lot of contracts out for to retain those pillars, guys like Franklin and Buckner and whatnot. So that would be really interesting, though. I mean, if you do get blown out on primetime on the road after you made a QB switch, man, there's a lot of things that could happen after that. So who knows?
Yeah. Patrick, another great question, brother. Really, really appreciate all of your support as always. And Drake, you kept mentioning Aaron Jones. Let's talk about Aaron Jones a little bit. The Vikings really don't have the best rushing attack. They're 22nd in the NFL in rushing offense at 111 per game. And the Colts, like I said, had a really good game against the Houston Texans last weekend, where Joe Mixon had 102 yards, but the rest of the Texans offense combined for -8 yards on the day. So really they only gave up 96 yards on the ground. So taking that into account, do you think that this Colts run defense is going to have similar success against the Vikings as they did against Houston, or is it going to be back to what we have been accustomed to seeing, unfortunately, this season, where the Colts are still ranked 30th in the NFL in rushing, giving up 151.9 yards per game?
I'm high enough on Aaron Jones, but I don't think that he has the momentum or really the kryptonite factor that Joe Mixon does for the Colts. I think there's a better chance to contain this guy because Tyson Chandler, I think, is his backup. Hasn't really done much. Alexander Madison, longtime backup, is now in Las Vegas. So it is all about Aaron Jones with that running game. I think there's a good chance to have success here, but they're going to be looking at DeForest Buckner and Grover Stewart. I would assume that they're going to try to attack those outside edges. They're going to try to force a guy like Leatu Latu to play run defense, and he's had some rough games in run defense this year. So I think there's a good chance here, though, to really force Sam Darnold to beat you with 30, 40 pass attempts, man, and not have a run game to lean on. And in that case, I mean, it's pretty much Justin Jefferson that's done the damage.
Yeah, I agree. And I do think that the Colts run defense will be better again this week. Watch me eat my words, but this rushing attack for the Vikings doesn't scare me. It really doesn't. And when you look at the rushing, the different teams that they have faced recently, I mean, the Jaguars are a really good rushing team. The Titans are I wouldn't say really good, but they're a decent rushing team with Tony Pollard. Joe Mixon is obviously a really, really good back. The Miami Dolphins didn't do really much on the ground. So I mean, if the Colts can hold the Vikings to their average around 100 to 110 yards per game, you take that. You definitely take that. I think that would be a solid outing for this Colts team. But you mentioned Justin Jefferson. That is obviously the biggest threat to this Colts team. Justin Jefferson, in my opinion, the best wide receiver in the NFL when healthy. And he certainly is a master getting open, scoring. He's a threat from all three levels of the field. Justin Jefferson is an absolute monster. If the Colts have any hope to win this game on Sunday, Drake, they got to contain Justin Jefferson, and that's not easy to do. I'm not saying lock him down for 3 catches, 30 yards.
That's not.
But you can't let him take over the game. You can't let him have a game where he catches 8 or 9 balls and has 170 yards and 2 touchdowns. You have to limit the impact that Justin Jefferson has on this game, and make Sam Darnold go to different areas of the field, whether it's Jordan Addison or whoever. You just can't let Justin Jefferson take over this football game.
Yeah, and I mean the stats show it. Okay, like he is literally damn near the entire receiving game. I mean, Darnold himself has, let me see here, 1,610 passing yards. Justin Jefferson has accounted for 646 of those. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so he is a massive part of the offense. If you can even just figure out ways to layer the coverage to force him to go to other players, the stats show it that they don't have as big of an impact. They don't have TJ Hawkinson. So it's all about just do not let Justin Jefferson destroy your game plan. Something similar to the way they attack the Texans would be wonderful.
Justin Jefferson on his way to another all-pro season, 646 yards and 5 touchdowns on 41 catches so far in 2024. But Drake, we're getting close to the end here. What's the X factor going to be? And I think it's you can go a bunch of different ways because I think this game is really hard to predict which unit is going to be the most successful, because you can make claims for pretty much any unit. That's why I think that this could be a very different game than we might originally think. But who is going to be your X factor for this matchup?
I was going to say whoever the hell is covering Justin Jefferson the most, but that's not a person. So I'm going to go with Shane Steichen. I want to see Shane Steichen go out there and win a game with Joe Flacco after making a quarterback change, after claiming to be the guy who benched Anthony Richardson. Let's go out there and win on primetime.
Okay. I'm going to go Michael Pittman Jr. I think, like I said, there has to be a guy that steps up for this team outside of Jonathan Taylor and Josh Downs. And the next logical person is Michael Pittman. Pittman was not good enough last week against the Houston Texans. And I understand he's dealing with a back injury that is really hindering his ability and what he can do out there. But at the same time, if you're out there playing, you're expected to produce. Michael Pittman hasn't done that so far this year. Michael Pittman needs to be better for himself, for this offense, and for this entire team to go out there and win. We know that Josh Downs is going to get his with Joe Flacco. Again, wouldn't surprise me to see Downs with 9 catches and 100 yards, but Michael Pittman has to come up big for the Colts to win on Sunday. Let's look at the chat. Paul Wilson is saying Josh Downs. Patrick, as always, saying Grant Stewart is going to give Aaron Jones a rock bottom. Love to see it. Sean Contright is saying Josh Downs as well. Tressa is saying Alec Pierce will step up. An NFL nerd as well, Grant Stewart. The fur blur. That's a fantastic nickname. Fantastic NFL nerd. All right, Drake. Colts Vikings Sunday Night Football, first primetime matchup for Indy this year. A lot of people are picking against the Colts because of everything that's happened, because the Vikings are going to be motivated. But Drake, what say you? Do the Colts come out on top after this crazy week they've been having, or are they going to come up short to the Minnesota Vikings on Sunday night?
You know, I really did. Sorry about the camera, guys. I really did think that I was going to be saying, hey, it's really not all about, winning. It's about Anthony Richardson. So this is a good matchup for Joe Flacco, though. I will say, hey, given the situation, the quarterback change, I think that he has a chance to get some quick throws off. Big game from Josh Downs ahead, people. Give me the Colts 27-23. I think that if you can limit Justin Jefferson, you can limit Aaron Jones. Man, Sam Darnold, he's really not proven to target many other people than those two. So if you can contain his biggest playmakers, I think you have a chance in this one.
27-23 Colts. Okay, Drake is buying into it, thinking the Colts are going to overcome. Let's take a look at the chat here and see what everyone's thinking. Sean Contright is going 27-24 Colts. Tressa 28-20 Colts. A lot of people on the Colts this weekend. Andy Racer saying Colts win by 20. That would be huge
wild
for this team. Paul Wilson saying Colts 28-27 in a shocker. And then the CFO himself, Patrick, is saying Vikings 33, Colts 24. And guys, are we going to leave Patrick alone all out on that island to pick the Vikings? No, we're not. I am going to join Patrick on that island. I'm going with the Vikings this weekend. I think that it's been too much of a distraction, everything that's gone on. Again, I just continue to go back and look at this offense not being as dynamic. You might see the efficiency go up a little bit. But I am also taking into account that the Vikings are a very, very motivated team right now. It's in prime time. The Colts don't have much experience in prime time. Neither does Sam Darnold, granted. But again, they're on the road. A lot has happened this week. And I just don't think that the Colts are there yet to compete with this Vikings team. I don't think it's going to be a blowout by any stretch of the imagination. So I am going to go 27-20 Vikings. I think that Joe Flacco is going to get the Colts over the 20 mark, but again, that the offense just isn't going to be dynamic enough, and the Colts are going to make just enough mistakes that it's not going to be a nail biter by any means. It'll still be close, but I think the Vikings will be in control of this game for most of the contest. So seems like Patrick and I are the only ones going against the Colts. Hey, we've got some more picks here. Tressa is saying 27-21 Colts. So Tressa changing her pick a little bit. Shane Gregory is joining us, 40-14 Vikings. AR comes back versus the Bills. I'm going to burst your bubble. Richardson's not coming back against the Bills, even if they do lose 40-14. NFL Nerd saying, anyone remember 2022 Vikings game? I try not to. The 2021 comeback, so we'll have to see. Rich Wheeler saying 39-36 Vikings, a high-scoring affair there in Minnesota. So we're going to have to see what happens, but Drake, you have the confidence that the Colts can overcome it this weekend. I do not. I don't think it's going to be. I don't think it's going to be a fun outing for the Colts on Sunday night. But we're already at an hour, guys. So let's quickly run through the rest of our topics here tonight by first looking at the Colts injury report. And since it is Wednesday, this is probably going to change quite a bit, but we'll still run through it anyway. Drake, Josh Downs, Ryan Kelly, Michael Pittman Jr., Braden Smith, all did not participate today, and we've seen that throughout the season. These guys get Wednesday off. They usually practice on Thursday. Some of them practice Friday. Others of them get rest again. I would expect all of those guys to be out there on Sunday.
Yeah, absolutely. They've had these designations throughout the entire season. I even think going back to last season, especially for Braden Smith. So guy pretty much plays through injury every week.
Exactly. Now, Jannard Avery was full participant. He missed last week with that foot injury. He is likely to be back. Anthony Richardson, just dealing with some soreness in his wrist and shoulder, was full participant in practice. Again, he'll be the backup on Sunday. But the one to watch, we've already talked about it, Bernhard Raimann. In the concussion protocol, it started experiencing concussion-like symptoms Monday morning after the game. He self-reported those symptoms, did not practice today, and in order for him to get through the concussion protocol, he would have to be probably at least a limited participant tomorrow in order to have a chance of playing on Sunday night.
Yeah, and you absolutely have to have him. I mean, if you don't, Matt Gonsalves, I think it is a little bit of a trial by fire to probably help his development a little bit. But man, Bernhard Raimann, he's still been a solid left tackle. And I think that he's regressed a little bit this year from last year, but you'd still rather have him. So
Yeah, exactly. So, but in the grand scheme of things, honestly, it's looking like it's not going to be a terrible week injury-wise for the Colts, knock on wood. We'll certainly have to see who, if anyone else, pops up. But again, the guy to watch throughout the week is Bernhard Raimann. Let's look at the latest Colts news and rumors, Drake. A lot of practice squad moves that do not include Spencer Schrader. Clap it up for Spencer Schrader, everyone, because he's no longer the practice squad pawn for the Indianapolis Colts. He was signed to the New York Jets practice squad and could potentially be playing tomorrow night could be potentially playing tomorrow night, I think, against the Texans. So Zerline was placed on IR. Spencer Schrader could be kicking on Thursday Night Football with the Jets. So be sure to pay attention to that. And if he is, let's cheer on our boy Spencer Schrader. The Colts did restore quarterback Jason Bean to the practice squad. He was on the practice squad injured list. He has gotten over that injury and now is on the practice squad. Funny enough, Jason Bean now wearing number 12 for the Indianapolis Colts. So, hey, is it the quarterback of destiny? We'll have to see. But I can't even make myself think that's serious. But the Colts signed cornerback Trey Flowers and running back Evan Hall back to the practice squad this week, and in return released Josiah Bronson, wide receiver Ethan Fournier, and cornerback Kelvin Joseph, who played a little bit on Sunday on special teams, and I think he ended up with a penalty, so didn't really give that much. But so just a lot of practice squad moves that don't include Spencer Schrader. That's the latest Colts news for you guys. But Drake, quarterback situation be damned. Colts Vikings Sunday night. It's going to be a raucous atmosphere there at I think it's Bank of America or M&T Bank
Stadium.
M&T Bank Stadium.
Yep.
So it's gonna be a while. Or is M&T Bank, is that in Baltimore? I almost
that is Baltimore.
Yeah. What is
it?
What is the all right, we're gonna look this up real quick. Viking Stadium. This is great podcasting. Great. US Bank Stadium. That's right. I knew it was
a bank. We were close.
Yeah. So anyways, US Bank Stadium. Colts heading to Minnesota, and the Joe Flacco era for the Indianapolis Colts officially begins. Pretty ridiculous that we're having to say that in the year 2024. But hey, we'll see if the Colts end up rallying around Joe Flacco, because if they do rally around Joe Flacco, hey, you might see a really inspired performance out of this Indianapolis Colts team on Sunday night, and they might surprise some people, including myself.
Yeah, and their backs are against the wall. The media, the national eye, it's going to be right on number 5 and number 15. So if there's anybody that can handle it, it's a guy that's been in the league almost 20 years. I know that the QB move is irritating, but given the matchup, given the situation, he's seen a lot, guys. So
yeah, very well said. So that's our show for tonight, everyone. Really, really appreciate you guys tuning in to talk about the Colts Vikings matchup this weekend. Want to give a shout out to the CFO Patrick Truitt and David Palmer for the super chats. Appreciate the hell out of every single one of you guys and everyone else that joined us this evening. And then NFL Nerd is going to round us out with the final super chat of the evening. Appreciate you, NFL Nerd. You're one of the good ones. You're one of the GOATs. Thank you so much for all of your support and always joining us here on these episodes. And guys, we hope you all turn into NFL Nerd and join us every Monday and Thursday night. And I'm sure NFL Nerd follows us on all of our socials, so you need to do it as well. Like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook, follow at Colts_SI on X, and make sure you're subscribed to the Horseshoe Huddle YouTube channel. You hit that bell to make sure your notifications are on, so whenever Drake and I go live, you won't miss it. Make sure you leave a like on this video as well. That helps us in the algorithm. And then wherever you listen to podcasts, be sure to look up the Horseshoe Huddle podcast, subscribe, give us a 5-star review so we can reach other Colts fans just like you. But Drake, because of the news, because of everything going on West 56th Street this week, boy, do we have a lot of content out there on horseshoehuddle.com. Tell the people what they need to go check out.
Yeah, so there was a certain Colts icon that had a stern message for Anthony Richardson after he decided to tap out of the game, so go check that out. And then Steichen himself, he dished on Anthony Richardson and benching him, and who did it, why they did it, what the goal is now, as opposed to what he said just a couple months ago, so go check that out as well.
Yeah, give those a read. Myself, I'm going to have all the analysis on what Anthony Richardson said today, my analysis on what he said, what it means, what I've heard that's gone on behind the scenes, and the rest of my thoughts on this entire quarterback saga with the Indianapolis Colts. That comes out tomorrow morning on horseshoehuddle.com. Make sure you check it out. Go follow Drake at DWalsterDrake. You can follow me at Andrew Moore NFL, and we'll be back Monday night, since it's Wednesday, but we'll be back next Monday night to talk about this matchup between the Colts and the Vikings. Do the Colts get back over 500, or are they back below 500? A lot can happen in this game, but it's going to be on Sunday Night Football. We're all going to be tuned in to see what Joe Flacco and this Colts team can do against the Vikings. So everyone, enjoy the rest of your week. Have a happy Halloween. Enjoy your weekend and the Colts game, and we'll see you back here on Monday night, as always, to break it down with all of you.